Let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
This is so awesome.
We are an open culture that believes in the importance of
What is that process that a developer, or let's say,
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed?
Hello and welcome to this week's Ask an OpenShift Admin Office Hours live stream. I am Andrew Sullivan, joined as always by the amazing and incredible Mr. Jonny Rickard. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I appreciate that. The nice words are awesome. So thank you, because I feel like a dirtbag.
We're starting off the new year right. You know, New Year's resolutions and all that other stuff.
That's right. How's it going?
It's good. Good to be back. I feel out of place, which is weird, right? Because it's been, I don't know, a month since we were here last, a little over, and it's been a busy time of year, right? Over the last 5 weeks or so, with all the stuff that's going on, both professionally and personally, you know, holidays and all that other stuff. It's good to be back, and I miss being in the seat.
I agree. Yeah, it's I'm sure, like, once we get going, like, you know, the comfort, you break the leather back in, you know what I mean? Like, it gets nice and comfortable again. Yeah,
what's the usual cliche, you know, riding a bicycle, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, being from Texas is back in the saddle, you know, naturally. So
yeah, now I'm gonna have that song stuck in my head. So
you're welcome.
Thanks for that. Yeah. But I know this is the first time that you and I, like, we've slacked a little bit over the last, like, since the holiday, but we haven't really caught up. We haven't really talked at all. So I hope you had a good holiday. I think you said last week that you had a pipe burst or something like that.
Oh, man, yeah. So we've had crazy weather. I'm sure everybody in America has had crazy weather, but like we had a small leak. Just it looked like what had happened is the pipe had frozen, and then as water pressure built up, it caused a pinhole leak. And so I woke up on like Monday morning or Tuesday morning, and I was like, "That's not right," and just water's dripping down the wall.
Oof.
So yes, plumbing is amazing.
Yeah, water, you know, who thought water in a house was a good idea, right?
Yeah. Man.
You know, a friend of mine who I worked with at my last employer, he came to Red Hat. I came to Red Hat. We still friends, still chat with each other. He at one point he had to move out of his house for something like 6 months because the laundry room on the second floor had a leak, and it basically came down and it destroyed, like, drywall and flooring and everything in the first floor and the basement. And they moved out while all the repairs were happening. And
yeah, dude, I have a friend that's a very similar thing. Their laundry room was on the second floor over the garage, and they just bought the house, and apparently there'd been a leak, and then through the ceiling into the garage, like, completely came down.
So, yep, drywall,
Yeah.
or I don't know why. What's the difference between drywall and gypsum board? I hear it referred to as gypsum board sometimes. Anyways, doesn't matter.
Must be an East Coast thing.
So, Happy New Year, everyone. Glad to have everyone join us here today. This is our first stream of 2024. I promise I will, you know, only say 2023, you know, a dozen or so times before I realize what year it is.
Yes.
But we are very much looking forward to what's happening this year. We wanted to take this stream as an opportunity to do a little bit of a retrospective on 2023 and some of the things that have happened, as well as discuss some of the things that we're looking forward to in 2024. I do want to say that we want this very much to be an interactive session. So if there's things that are on your mind, you know, as always, this is an office hour live stream. So you can always ask whatever's on your mind, talk about whatever it is that you think is interesting. But in particular, if there are things that you think were interesting in 2023 or things you're curious about, or maybe want to bring up for 2024, let's chat about that. And I promise this is only like 15% Jonny and I fishing for topics for the year. We already have a number of things in mind. We already have a whole bunch of stuff that we want to stream about. This is more just kind of, I'll say, a little bit less formal. I don't know how that's possible with you and I, Jonny.
No.
The intention is to have a conversation about just cool things that are happening. We're both technologists at the core, even though my title does say people manager these days, as well as marketing somewhere mixed in there. Never a dull moment.
That's right.
I promise I usually know what I'm talking about. I don't know. I feel like that.
Mostly, maybe.
I used to make a joke. So my previous company, my title was technical marketing engineer. And so I'd make a joke when I go and do like an executive briefing or something of, I'm 2/3 full, know what I'm doing and 1/3 full of crap, but you have to guess which one is the 1/3.
Yeah, that's your problem.
Now I'm a manager of technical marketing. And so now it's down to like 2/3 of those terms are, full of crap.
Hey, it's all in the mix, right?
Anyways, I wanted to take this opportunity, Jonny and I wanted to take this opportunity to just chit chat and talk about just OpenShift and Kubernetes and all the things that are going on and all of the places and all that other stuff. So think about that for a minute. Feel free to shoot us a chat message, whatever platform you're watching us on. If there's anything that comes to mind, go ahead and plug it in. Whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Twitch, it'll get replicated across to all of them. So we will see all of those messages. Or if you're not watching us live, feel free to reach out. We love to hear from folks. I know we had a backlog of things over the holiday and stuff like that. I think I've gotten through at least 3/4 of those. As well as pinged a whole bunch of SMEs and engineering folks to try and identify a couple that I didn't know the answer to. And Jonny, I think I included you on all of those, just to be sure.
Yep, I think so.
You're technically in engineering, right? You should know all the answers.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. So with that being said, let's see, top of mind topics. I think we had only one or two of these. I'd say it has been quiet, but quiet is relative, right? We've got a whole bunch of stuff that's just happening, that's going on here inside Red Hat, not the least of which for any Red Hatters who are watching, this is the start of the Red Hat 1 series of internal conferences, training stuff. So that's where most of my team is tied up or has been tied up over the last several weeks. And let's see, today I think is the last day. It's either today or tomorrow, but they're in Indonesia right now. So, today my oldest is out of school, so I can hear him. I don't know if y'all can hear him, but he's playing some video game upstairs, and like most kids do these days, he seems to find it necessary to shout at the computer. So.
You know what? I was just gonna say, like, that's probably one of my favorite things about listening to my kids play is just the way that they talk crap to each other. It's so funny.
Yeah. Yep. I find it all very amusing, and so my two youngest, my two girls, have been playing some horror game, and they love these games, and I go up and I'm looking at the computer screen, and it's this like crazy alien looking terrifying monster thing. It's on Roblox, so it can only be so terrifying. We're like, what are you playing? Exactly. They go, it's this horror game where you gotta run and hide from this thing, and they were just having an absolute blast. So
that's awesome.
Nothing like the games that we used to play when we were kids, right? The original Super Mario Brothers, right?
Duck Hunt.
Yeah, Waleed, how can I solve chicken and egg and automating fully cluster provisioning, including day 2 operators using Terraform and Argo CD? I'm going to 100% toss you under the bus on that one, Jonny.
Yeah, it's always difficult because you have to start somewhere, right? And you always have to have some type of environment. So you need the way that we did it for a project called Sparta a long time ago is we built a container and we had it pull down. It was just a bunch of Ansible and a bunch of shell scripts that would pull down stuff and kind of bundle it all together. And then we'd take that and we'd upload it into a cluster. So if we were doing disconnected for connected stuff, I think for your cluster provisioning, it comes down to making that decision about, are you going to do IPI or UPI or agent-based installer? Like which way are you going to go? And then you can automate if you're going to do IPI, that's probably the simplest because then you really just need to get the binaries, update your install config, run the deployment, and then once you've done that, take the authentication, things like the kubeadmin password or the kubeconfig from the deploy directory, and then just start stacking them. But there's so many variables that go into that question. Like, it's such a loaded question because are we talking disconnected environments? Are we talking bare metal? Or, are we talking, there's just so many things that go into it. So, I mean, yeah, basically it's just figure out what you need that you can do all the time, like get, install scripts, getting your binaries and stuff like that, automate that. And then like from there, what are you doing? Are you doing disconnected, and then
Yep.
really just kind of working stages, I guess, is ultimately what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, and I'll throw another wrinkle in there, right? Which is hosted control planes. Because with hosted control planes, a new cluster is a YAML file, and it automatically
Hmm.
registers into ACM. So you can kind of have this, depending on how pure you want that Terraform and Argo, deployment method. It's okay. I apply a YAML file. It deploys my cluster. My cluster registers with ACM. ACM has a policy that pushes out Argo, and then it picks up the config from there, and Argo, handles the rest.
Yeah, and that's something that we do
But
on the patterns team too, right? Is we deployed the Argo operator as a policy and then start laying down applications after that. Um, but yeah, it's really like um, it really comes down to like how do you what stage are you going at? And then Wally did also asked about like where the pattern's going. We've looked at clusters as a service, to do some of the cluster provisioning. The hosted control plane it's just so awesome because it just makes everything so easy. But like then there's the cluster as a service where it uses a lot of the same tooling as hosted control plane, but it's not like directly dependent upon it. If that makes any sense. Like it's a pretty cool project. So I'll try and find that GitHub.
yeah, I was. It's been a minute. I was part of the, I don't know, beta tester, hackathon, hackfest,
Hackathon.
with
Yeah.
that. So yeah, I did get a little bit of hands on with that, and it is pretty cool, right? You go in, you click around in the GUI, and you have a cluster that you can do whatever you want to.
Yeah.
Um, let's see, manage cloud. Where's validated patterns going? Any roadmap? There from Waleed. So the managed clouds stuff. So think ARO, ROSA, all
Hmm.
of that. They have a bit of a different roadmap, but it's also quite a bit the same. I know that they handle things slightly differently in how they roll out new cluster versions and specific features and stuff like that, because the SREs are the ones who have to, understand and take responsibility for, various parts and stuff like that. I will say that one of the coolest things that I think has happened with Rosa in particular is it's now fully supported to add bare metal, AWS bare metal instances, and you can deploy OpenShift virtualization in there now. So I thought that was really interesting of, here in the days of Broadcom and VMware and all of the whatever's going on there, and just giving folks options, as well as from an application modernization perspective. Hey, I've got this application. I want to bring it into the cloud. Our plan is, in 6, 9, 12, 18, however long months, we're going to have everything hosted in AWS. But what do I do with this part right now? I can get 70% of it into containers in Kubernetes or EC2, but I've got this thing that's, dependent on some virtual machine. Well, now you can put it up there in AWS and have it adjacent to everything and hooked into all the same services. I thought that was one of the really cool early use cases that we saw with that. Because I'll admit, I fully admit in the product meetings that I was extremely skeptical of this. And it turns out one of the early use cases that we've seen with customers is like Windows applications, because it's not apparently, and Andrew is not an AWS person, right? So even when I talk about myself in the third person, but apparently it's challenging to do Windows applications in AWS. So there's been a number of customers who've picked it up, and that's what they've been doing. They've been bringing Windows VMs into OpenShift virtualization running in Rosa. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah. So we on the GitHub's Guide to the Galaxy last week, we had this guy on from I can't remember what company he was from, but he's a developer for video games, right? And he was talking about like they've EKS has added the capability to add Windows nodes, so that way you can actually start deploying Windows containers to the node and build like all the libraries and stuff like that out. And I was like, man, that just how far we've come, like just to get to that where like, now I can go tell EKS like, look, I want a Windows node, and I'm just going to go hammer it with some stuff and build Windows apps and then push it out, and your game's got the latest pack or whatever that it needs to do the latest and greatest thing. It's pretty incredible. And to your point about not being easy, like that was the same point that he was making. It's like up to that point, it was not a trivial thing to get that Windows application built in the cloud. Like it was a giant pain.
Yeah. It's I am constantly impressed by the complexity of things.
Mhm.
You know, we've been talking for when was the first time people started talking about DevOps? You know, cloud native became a thing in the late 2000s. You know, AWS was launched in 2007, 2008. So here we are 15 years later, and you know there's still, you know, massive complexity in that sort of, you know, monolithic waterfall application type of thing. You know, I
Mhm.
think one of these books back here is might be that one because it's yellow, is you know, the no, I
How
can't.
about the Phoenix Project?
Yes, Phoenix Project. Gosh,
Okay.
my brain doesn't work all the time. Yeah.
It's still Monday, dude. It's cool. It's cool.
No, it's not. I just had to do a double take. Oh man, that would be something. Let's see. R-Hope9, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I know it's been a minute, and we appreciate you coming out to join us. Hyperbox, hello. How does one get started with Red Hat and OpenShift? Currently, know nothing. How do I proceed to learn and work with this as a career? So first, welcome, and we appreciate you, and thank you for wanting to pick up OpenShift. So my typical generic recommendation is to go to learn.openshift.com. Where's my browser window? Let's see. Let's get rid of that, and then let's share my browser window. There we go. All right. So if you go to learn.openshift.com, you'll get redirected over to developers.redhat.com/learn. And if you scroll down through here, there's just a ton of different interactive tutorials and all kinds of other stuff that's inside of here. In particular, I always like these interactive tutorials. So if we look through here for product and we scroll down to find, for example, whatever happened to the search in this thing? Red Hat OpenShift container platform. You can see I get like this, send events to Apache Kafka, and I can click start tutorial. And notice that I have not logged into anything yet. I click launch here. And in a moment, what it should do is give me, I've never done this one before, so I don't know what this one's going to pop up with. But most of the time, these pop up and you have access to computer says loading. There we go. So it must be provisioning an instance. Anyways, it'll drop you into a real live running OpenShift instance. So it's running what is tantamount to OpenShift local in AWS. Has a whole lab guide. You can walk through things, stuff like that. So it's a great way to get hands-on immediately. That being said, it does assume some basic knowledge. So if you are completely, utterly, totally new, unfamiliar with Kubernetes, unfamiliar with containers and all other stuff, the first thing that I would suggest is looking for DO0180. DO080.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go here, so this DO080, it is a free course. You just go and sign up for it, right? You got to log in and make sure you have your Red Hat Learning login. It's a free course. You can get started. It takes an hour or so to go through. It's entirely online, and it acts as sort of that introduction to a lot of these concepts and a lot of these things. Once you start to feel comfortable with that, if you have, if you're able to take training, of course, there's a whole learning course, DO 180 and all that other stuff, training path for DO 180 and all of the other stuff. If you want to continue to learn sort of hands-on, there's also, if you go to try.openshift.com, you'll land at this page, and it has an introduction to how to get, hands-on and how to start doing some things. So for example, if you are a developer or an application owner and you just want to get like, hey, how do I start deploying applications? I just need a cluster. I want to play around with deployments and pods and all that other stuff. Developer Sandbox is completely free. I think it lasts for 30 days. What you do in there can run for up to 30 days, and then it resets and you start over again. Or you can go with Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform. So if you want to deploy on-prem or into your own cloud, you get a 60-day trial. That being said, if you are using it for single-use, non-production use cases, you can use the developer entitlement. So coming back over here to developer.redhat.com. If you have a login here, this gives you an entitlement for up to 16 nodes of OpenShift. And essentially, it's the same as you go and download the same bits. It lasts perpetually. I think it's every year after you renew your developer stuff. But yeah, you can go and deploy and see what it's going to be like to run it in vSphere, or what it's like to run in AWS, or what it's like to run on bare metal, all that stuff. Any thoughts there, Jonny, while I'm rambling on?
No, this actually kind of like for the advanced stuff though, like it kind of leads right into the next top of mind topic that I had. But yeah, no, I think that you pretty much covered it.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yep. So one thing I don't even know how I came across this. Like I think I saw it posted online or something like that. Here, I'll just share the link with you since you're already sharing your screen. Yeah.
Now, which one of our 7 chat platforms are we going to?
Yeah, 8 million chats. But yeah, so like I'd seen something like, like Red Hat certified system administrator, Red Hat certified engineer. Now there's a Red Hat certified OpenShift architect. All right. And so like it kind of follows the same workflow as like your normal certified architect. So you have to take 5 exams and stuff like that. And so you get your RHCE, your Red Hat certified engineer, and then now you take these like these next level certifications. And so you can actually be an architect in OpenShift. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome, because they used to do, I don't know if you remember back in the day, they had like the data center, the Red Hat certified data center specialist and Red Hat's, security specialist and all that. And so I'm glad to see that we're going back to some of these like targeted certifications, because I think that that's important, right? Especially when you have people that are going after like CKA, CKS, CKAD. I think to align with that out in the community, and then have something where we can say, hey, look, now you're an architect based off of these criteria, and it's either one of these 5 exams. So I'm pretty excited about this. I'm going to try and give this a shot and renew.
You said it was 5 of them, right?
It's 5.
Yeah. Which is interesting, right? Because you see, there's only 4 of them that are sort of infrastructure-y.
Mm-hmm.
And then at least one of the others you have to pull from doing something a little more developer-centric. I mean, service mesh kind of straddles the line, right? But
yeah, that's the closest one that's going to be on both sides.
Yeah. So, because this is, ACM, ODF, so OpenShift virtualization, which, that's been my world quite a bit lately. Thanks, Broadcom. Automation integration, that one, I don't know what that one is actually. That must be, I don't know what that one's focusing on. SREs.
This is the automation and integration. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I haven't looked at this one, so I don't know what the actual skills. I don't know what the actual things that it's doing are.
So this is like so you have the 280, right, which is like our sysadmin for OpenShift.
Yeah.
The 380. This is like the next level. This is like the this would be like the engineer of that. If I were to try and like go bit for bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So probably ACM focused, if I had to guess. ACM and Ansible.
Yeah, probably some Ansible. I don't know if it might have ACM in there. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but there's one that was actually like OPP based. Like if it was literally like all the OPP products. So you had to install ACS, ACM, all that. So I'm surprised that wasn't on the list. But yeah, it's cool because now you can actually focus on something specific instead of having to do like the normal 5 where you just kind of pick 5 random tests that obviously some low hanging fruit, and then the ones that you really want to do. So I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I should look into that myself, because it's been a while since I did that. Since I became a manager.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and even like in consulting, right? It was one of those things where it was more like a friendly challenge. Like who's getting their architect, who's got this and that and stuff like that. And then because you could go to a customer and say, hey, like we've got this dude, he's this gal, and she's a certified architect or whatever. But there's not really that same competition in the engineering group, probably not in the product management group either, where it's like, oh, I'm an RCA, baby. Like nobody probably cares.
Yeah, well, product managers tend to they're very focused in a very narrow area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be, knowing a lot of them, they are extremely, we've had a bunch of them here on the stream, right?
Mm-hmm.
Extremely smart, extremely knowledgeable, right? A lot of them are very technical, but it's narrowly focused. And so, I'll pick on, Peter, because he's a PM that I work with all the time, right? OpenShift virtualization. He can tell you the nuts and bolts and all kinds of inner workings of all of the different things that happen inside of OpenShift virtualization. But then it's like, go over to, other parts of Kubernetes or even other parts of OpenShift Platform Plus, and we start to lose that knowledge. And the same is true for us on the tech marketing side, right? We tend to
Yeah.
focus I was always infrastructure focused, kind of under the covers and stuff like that. Um, People on my team are developer experience focused, or cloud native applications focused, or application
Mm-hmm.
platform focused. And, it's, I've said it before. I think I say it almost every stream now, of like, OpenShift itself is a fractal. Like, for every question you answer, it opens up an infinite number of new questions. And for every one of those you answer, it's a whole nother, like, it just repeats ad nauseum. And
Yeah.
that's OpenShift. Like, let's ignore Kubernetes. Let's ignore RHEL because,
Yeah.
our is RHEL. So yeah,
And
don't feel bad.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just don't feel bad when you encounter something new or you learn something new and it's like, oh, I should have known that. Like, no, that's not at all how this works. Like,
Yeah.
when I interview technical people, even now, it's like, I don't need you to know everything. Nobody can know everything. I just need you to know where to go to look. Like, oh, I don't know the answer, but I think if I man this command, or I think if I look here in the docs, or I think if I OC explain this, it'll help me to find the answer. Like, that's the most important thing in my opinion.
Yeah. That used to be part of my preamble when I would start like an interview. Like, I get it. You're interviewing at Red Hat. I've been at Red Hat for X amount of years. Holy crap! It's going to be, I think, 7
Yeah,
this
you're
year.
an old timer.
I know, 7 or 8. Holy crap, 8! Oh my god, it's going to be 8 years this year. But yeah, it's like I'm like, look, I've been here for a long time. I don't know everything. Like, there's still things I'm hearing about that I'm like, holy crap, what is that? I said, so
Yeah.
you're not in. So I don't expect you to have any idea like what every single thing is. So it's just tell me what you don't know up front, like, or if I actually just say I don't know, don't dig yourself a hole, because if I think and I'm digging, it just doesn't work out. So
Yep. Yeah, it's funny because even when I was like deeply involved in things like the installer and CoreOS and all of that, to the point where I was going to the, occasionally I'd go to the biweekly stand-ups, or I'd go to the feature demos and stuff like that. I would still learn new things every single time.
Yeah.
But yeah. Let's see. I'm looking at chat here. OpenShift as a service for cloud service provider use case. Is there hosted control plane use case for cloud service providers? Yes. So, for example, ROSA now uses hosted control planes. So, if you consider Red Hat to be the cloud service provider, I know AWS, and I know it's a weird analogy, but yes, there's no reason why you couldn't do something like that using hosted control planes. I think from a security, standpoint, the control plane is technically shared to some degree. So, you've got one cluster that is running control plane workloads, namespaced, for multiple other clusters. So as that service provider, you would have to decide, what is the acceptable amount of separation? Do I need to have hopefully this terminology doesn't get confusing, a hosted control plane cluster for each customer to host their control planes? So that way, Jonny, whether Jonny has one cluster or 1,000 clusters, all of his control planes are in resources that are only shared with his resources. As opposed to, I have one hosted control plane cluster and it hosts up to 100 control planes, and some of them might be Andrew's and some of them might be Johnny's and some of them might be someone else's, so on and so forth. I think that just comes down to what are your particular requirements? How are you, I'll say, configuring, positioning, offering, all that type of stuff as that service provider. But yeah, personally, and this is Andrew, I haven't done a whole lot of research digging into exactly what that would mean, but off the top of my head, I would say it's worth evaluating and considering.
If you're looking at financial savings, it's 100% the way to go. I mean, like just our team brought down our cloud spend. I mean, it was so significant because we went from building, a 3-3 cluster, right? 3 control plane, 3 computes,
Yeah.
and now we've just dropped that down to where like we're not even spinning up a control plane. We're spinning up a namespace with some pods that act. They are our control plane, and then our compute nodes, and then we have some scripts that shut them down at night using Lambda. But dude, it's just from a cloud spin perspective, it is the way to go. When you talk about automation and like, hey, I just need to spin this thing up really quick and do this.
Yeah.
IPI is still slow, right? UPI is still slow. The hosted control plane is freaking incredible. It's like 10 minutes and you've got a cluster and it's ready to go. Kubadmin password, console URL. I mean, it's
we got ClusterBot in Slack, so you just go in and ask ClusterBot.
I know. ClusterBot is awesome. That's a cool tool. That is an awesome tool.
Yep, it's that one's a lot of fun to use. And I need a cluster for this. ClusterBot, create me a new cluster, and 10 minutes later, here you go.
Yep, all the output that you need.
Yep. Let's see, Project vCluster. I haven't heard of that one. I'll dig that one up and take a look.
It's like Cluster API.
Is it?
It's based on Cluster API.
Okay. Yeah, because Machine API and Machine API was a fork of Cluster API like 5 years ago or more, and now we're coming full circle, and you're starting to see Cluster API back in OpenShift. So hosted control planes, for example, uses Cluster API. Let's see. Session about network observability operator. Not yet. That one is on our list of things to do. I actually have several tabs and one of my many browser windows open about eBPF and network observability and all that other stuff. So that one is definitely on the list. I think I reached out to Mark Curry and Deepthi before the holidays, so we'll follow up and we'll get that one on the calendar. RHOPE 9. I don't know the answer to that of 16 nodes or 16 cores. Because if you look in Appendix 1, which is where all of this comes from, here, let's see, let's share that same window again. And this is important because this periodically changes and comes up. So Red Hat Appendix 1. So if we look at the appendices, Appendix 1 is the one that describes, is the legal language behind these things. So you can see here, it was updated last month. So historically, if we dig through here, it explains developer, somewhere down in through here, developer subscriptions. Limited or no support, intended only for developer use, and you agree, not to access the subscription services for any other purposes. And then I think as we come down here, so we've got 1A, OpenStack. One of these is OpenShift. OpenStack, Enterprise Linux. Anyways, as we come down through here, one of these will say OpenShift. Yep, so development versus production use cases. Anyways, I want to say it says something like nodes in here because that's the generic terminology that they use. But I don't know if we actually differentiate in that respect. So I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I would say, if you're curious, if you're concerned about it, rather, definitely chat with a Red Hat account person and ask them for, specific clarification. I just don't know the answer, and Andrew is not a lawyer, nor is Andrew, stayed at a Holiday Inn Express recently. So for anybody who remembers those commercials.
And he doesn't play a lawyer in his live stream. So
no, I do not.
Yeah, you're out of
the actual lawyers would get mad at me. Let's see. I'm scrolling back up because the chat reset on me. Interested in implementing, a little bit complicated. What was that, Khalid? Oh, network observability operator. Yeah, I definitely want to get to that one sooner rather than later. So I had two items in our top of mind, which I know we kind of got distracted from. So one is, if you haven't looked or you haven't checked in a little bit, updates to OpenShift 4.14 are in the stable channel now, which means they're also in the US channel. That happened, I want to say, a week, maybe 2 weeks ago. So if you are ready, prepared, wanting to upgrade to 4.14 and get access to all of the new shiny greatness inside of there, you can do that now, including the EUS accelerated update process. So remember, that's where you pause the worker node machine pools, you update the control plane from 4.12 to 4.13 to 4.14, so sequential, and then you unpause the worker node machine pools and they jump directly from 4.12 to 4.14. So it is accelerated, reduces the number of reboots that you need there. The other top of mind thing that I had is we should be having the what's new in OpenShift 4.15 coming up in the next month or so, I want to say. So busy time of year for just all the things that are going on. I believe that KubeCon session acceptances have gone out, which means that we are dangerously close to that happening. So you'll see, of course, a bunch of marketing noise and releases and all kinds of other stuff coming from us around that. But yeah, when is KubeCon? KubeCon is early March, I think.
Yeah, spring. Crazy.
Yeah,
It's already here, man.
I know. Well, I don't remember if I said this on the stream, or I don't remember who I've said this to. Of like, right before the holidays, I had a team meeting with my folks. I'm like, go, take time off, enjoy the holidays. Red Hat shuts down for the last week of the year. Like, truly disconnect, because when we come back, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Because we've got, I said before, Red Hat One, our internal, training conference. We've got IBM Tech. We've got KubeCon. We've got there's a bunch of other kind of minor things, and then we've got Red Hat Summit, and then all of a sudden it's June. And did anybody remember to come up for air and take a deep breath? It's just I'm not complaining, because I wouldn't have done this. I've been doing this for a decade now. I wouldn't do this for this long if I didn't love doing it. But it's one of those, sometimes you just got to be aware, and mental health, and take time for yourself and all that other stuff, and admit that things are busy.
Yeah, and that's a good point, right, about the mental health thing, because we were just talking earlier. I was working late last night. You were working late last night. That probably wasn't the first night this week that you did that. So
Yeah.
you probably worked a little bit over the weekend. So yeah, it is definitely important to break it off a little bit sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, and sometimes, for me, I'm one of those people who I work best on a schedule. So if I were given the choice, my schedule would typically be 9 to 6, right? I want to keep most of my working hours in between there. But I am also flexible. I have people that work in EMEA, and hey, I get it. You don't want to be having a meeting with me at noon my time, which is 6 p.m. your time. That's not okay. So I don't mind having a one-on-one or something at 7 a.m. my time, when every week or every 2 weeks or something like that. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Conversely, we were chatting beforehand of today. Yeah, I was up. I think I was working at 6 a.m. today, because I'm couple hours this afternoon, I got to go, and I'm helping someone move some furniture around and stuff like that. And it's well, I have, as I tell my children all the time, there's things you have to do and things you want to do. Well, I have to get work done before I can do the thing I want to do, which is help my friend move. So the joys of being an adult, right?
Indeed. Yeah, I think. Do you think that the structured time is a? I know we're getting on deep conversation here, but do you think that you working in those hours from the military? Because I think that's where a lot of my stuff comes from, where I'm a lot of the structure I get from the military, but then
so probably no surprise, I tend towards being a workaholic. And so I find that the structure of, because when I first came over and worked on the vendor side, I fell into that trap of, there is always something somewhere going on that needs some kind of help or some kind of input. And so after the first 18 months or so, I was almost burnt out, because I realized that I'm working 12, 14, 16 hours a day, because I'd get up in the morning and, my phone would have messages from people in APAC or EMEA, and, hey, I was working this. Can you help me with this? I need, this or that. And, So I get up in the morning, and as I'm drinking my coffee, I'm working. And, okay, that continues throughout the day, time zones shift. And then suddenly, it's 6 o'clock my time, and West Coast US people are, it's still
Yeah.
midday for them. And so you're going until, 9, 10 o'clock at night, answering questions and stuff like that. And I found, and, I had to be pretty strict of, okay, it is now, it is outside of my working hours. If this is a critical emergency, like truly a critical emergency, I will help you. But otherwise, I'm sorry. It's fine to wait until tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm working on that. I'm trying to get there. I still, I struggle with that because I think my personality is overly accommodating, right? Like I want to be in it. Like I want to be in the middle of it. I want to be, I'm that guy that wants, I just want to be in the middle of everything and just be fighting with you, and just helping you figure stuff out. And so
like
I'll
a
jump in
little
and help
FOMO,
you.
right?
Yeah, yeah, that's probably it in a nutshell. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like now I'm trying to get to the point where I'm like, all right, I'm really busy and I'm trying to draw that line in the sand, but it's really hard because I just want to help everybody out. And I like helping everybody out. So
yeah, no, I did probably the closest I ever came to burnout. So that was when I first figured out that I need to control, or put guardrails up around myself. But
mhm.
I also, when I first really started getting involved with containers and Kubernetes and all of that stuff at my previous company, there was hardly anybody who had any expertise in that, but it kept coming up. And what I'd find is like, we had customers, we had account team, we had, EBC, like all this stuff. And so I ended up, there was one year where I went to a conference. The first conference of the fall season was like the end of August. And I think
Mhm.
I was home like 4 days between then and Thanksgiving. And, it was just like
Damn.
constant back to backs and this, and like, I was just all over the place. And it was one of those like, no, I like this, I can't do this anymore type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I've learned things the hard way. We're not all
Me too. Yeah.
smart and wise the moment we take
We're all
on the
scarred
role.
up from it though, right? That's where we get all these awesome scars, and I think
But it's like,
it's where we take a lot of these things in stride too, right? Like we've been through it. We're like, I'm not even gonna get upset about that. Like, it's not even worth my time.
yeah, yeah, yep. It was what was I going to say? Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Sorry,
Our whole
I
time.
talked over you.
No, you're good. Let's see. Show me how to generate the docs cluster install PDF. Just look at the page count. Yeah, that's a good point. Let's look at that. So let's see if we go to docs.openshift.com and we look at 4.14 and we go to installing. I think if we just pick one of these, it comes out to, let's see what happens if we do this. Oh, that's just that one page. So let's pick on installing a cluster on vSphere. If we were to just print this page, it comes out to, you going to tell me? 60 pages. However, officially, so I recently learned this. So officially, all of the docs are under access.redhat.com. It just so happens that the docs team, like the way that they generate them, it also works with docs.openshift.com, like the system that they use. So they keep that up.
Mhm.
So for example, I think it's ACM and ACS docs are in access.redhat.com, but not docs.openshift.com or something like that. Container platform, and I want installing. So if we just were to install PDF, here we go. $3,683 pages.
My God.
I don't know if you can see that.
Is that all?
Just a little light reading for when you can't sleep. Because it's funny because, a lot of it's duplicates because they use templates and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
Yep.
Wow.
So
Oh, how many reams of paper? So yeah, that's a box of paper, just about, right? Like,
no, it's more than, yeah. because a ream is 500 pages and it's
Yeah,
what, 10 reams per box or something like that. You know, if you do it two-sided, it's only
that's true. That's true.
three reams of paper still. I'm just looking through chat here. I see Waleed chatting about hosted control planes here. I know I'm running way behind on chat. I mean, it's like 10 minutes ago. Possible to change the IP address of a single node OpenShift. I think so. Because
That's where I was at. I don't remember.
I don't remember with single node OpenShift. So the question in my mind is, where is the API and star.apps DNS records at? So star.apps has to be external. And I think API is also external. And then they all point to the same IP address. Because, normally with like IPI on vSphere or any of the on-prem, things, it'll use internal DNS records managed by core DNS for like API ent and stuff like that. So I think so long as that's external and you can change it to point to the new IP address, it should be fine. Yeah, etcd doesn't have to reach out and contact anything or anybody, so it should be fine.
Exactly.
Like, you'll just end up in a situation where, some things might be broken until you go in and rearrange, but it should be possible, so far as I know.
And any caching that you have going on, right? Like if you have any cookies or anything like that saved, any DNS caching, you're gonna suffer through that for a little bit.
Our Hope 9, easier to be a workaholic when you love your job. Yeah, yes, definitely. It's also, Red Hat is very remote work friendly. And like I tell my team constantly, like, we are spread across the globe. I have people from Germany to India. Someone is always online. And so you can't go by like, when somebody else is online and when somebody else is working, or, hey, sometimes I have to, there's somebody on my team who maybe, I'll use myself as an example. Like today, I was online at 6. Like, you can't base your workday off of that, because what you may not know is, Andrew's going to work from 6 until 1 and then take a few hours off, from say 1 to 4 to go and take care of something personal and then come back and, finish out the day. And so if you gauge by that, it'll always end up with this just disconnect and this crazy, expectation type of thing. Multiply that by however many people are across the team, and yeah, it's definitely a dangerous trap to fall into. I don't know why, but that old video game Pitfall came to mind. Jonny will be right back. He sent me a message on here. I don't know where he's going, but he'll be right back. Feature on OpenShift to use AI Assistant to generate code in YAML. I don't know. Maybe have we? There is a bunch of stuff that is happening with AI and OpenShift. So at some point and I don't remember what has been publicly shown and what hasn't been publicly. That's funny. Dog getting in trouble, Jonny. So I don't remember what's been publicly shown and what hasn't been publicly shown. So I'm a little bit hesitant to talk about some of the things. So I know effectively, like Ansible Lightspeed. Ansible Lightspeed hooks in with, I think by default, they ask for Watson X AI, and it will do YAML code generation. So, plain language, describe what you want it to do. At some point, I think it was at Summit last year, we showed something similar with OpenShift as well. But there are a number of other things that are happening there. That's actually one of the things of, our theme for today is looking forward to 2024 AI. I was chatting with an exec at a customer recently, and I asked them, like, who on your team in December of 2022 could tell, could say, what is generative AI, or what is Chat GPT? And you might have had one or two of the super nerds, who were, interested or obsessed with those types of things, who would know. And in December of 2023, you would be hard pressed to find anyone in this industry who is not very keenly aware of generative AI and Chat GPT and how it's going to affect the way that we do so many things. So You're on mute, Jonny, or I can't hear you anyways. So I'm very interested to see, and from our side, from the OpenShift side, AI comes into play two different ways, right? There's AI that makes us better as administrators and users of the platform. I think I hear you now. I hear the hiss of your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sounds like it's the wrong microphone. Might be your laptop, but so there's AI that is a part of the product that Red Hat provides that hopefully makes life better, easier for us as administrators. And then there is AI as a workload. So your applications that are running, that are, doing model serving, that are, generating the model, that are consuming all of those resources, all of that type of stuff. OpenShift AI, which is sort of that overarching umbrella of how do we, what used to be called the Red Hat OpenShift data science thing. How do we do open or AI as a workload within OpenShift?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say ChatGPT, like over the last year, has become a household name, right? Like you'd be hard pressed not to find anybody that doesn't at least know what ChatGPT is, or at least have, in some sense, have heard about
Yeah.
ChatGPT. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy how like it spread like wildfire. I mean, it took off, and then everybody started talking about it. Like it's crazy.
Well, it's funny, right? So one of my hobbies is cooking, right? And
Mhm.
in case you can't tell by the body shape, so my personal YouTube feed is a lot of like cooking content creators, and it's funny because at some point last year I realized like almost every one of them now has sort of semi regularly occurring content of here's the most liked cookie recipe on chocolate chip cookie recipe on YouTube, and I'm going to compare it against ChatGPT's tell me the best cookie recipe type of thing. And
Mhm.
like everybody is now taking advantage of that in different ways. And these are people who are clearly not ultra technical, right? They edit videos, which even a monkey can do because here I am and I do it regularly.
Here we are.
Um, so no offense to any of the content creators, YouTube content creators or anything like that, but
Or monkeys.
it's
Yeah,
just
we don't mean to offend the monkeys either.
so clearly it's something that has become just super pervasive, which is very interesting to me. Changing IP addresses of API apps. Yeah, Steve. It is possible. Sorry, I know I'm jumping around as I look at chat here. It is possible. So, for example, let's share my window again. If we go back to docs.openshift.com, and strangely, sometimes I don't understand the way that we organize the docs, which is slightly frustrating. If I come here to installing and I'm going to pick on OpenShift on vSphere. So this is the IPI. Way down here at the bottom, we have configuring an external load balancer. So by default, when you deploy IPI, it like with vSphere, with Rev, with OpenStack, and I want to say bare metal. So the on-prem IPIs, it configures a quote unquote internal load balancer. So I put that in quotes because it's not really a load balancer. It's a virtual IP address that's managed by Keep Alive D, and it just passes amongst the nodes that happen to be hosting an ingress controller. So it's not load balancing, and it's not distributing connections across all of the nodes that have an ingress controller. It's just one, the one that's hosting the VIP.
Mhm.
So that VIP is whatever it happens to be. But if you say, oh, actually, I want to go to a more traditional load balancer method, I want to scale out horizontally my ingress controller to accommodate, more workload or whatever. So you can move to that external load balancer. And basically the way that you do that is you configure the new load balancer with whatever its IP address is, point it to all of the correct backend things, and basically get everything up and working. And then you just go in DNS and you change the DNS record for star.apps to point to that new load balancer. And then at that point, everything quote unquote should work. You just have to make sure that all of that stuff is in place beforehand. Otherwise, yeah, it can, especially API, it can break things. Apps is a little bit easier. API is risky.
Yeah.
Or I should say, not without risk. AI is like a sinus curve. Each iteration reaches higher. Yeah, I'm curious to see all of the things that are going to happen. I know we've got a bunch of stuff planned for Summit. I've already started to see some of the early planning for what we're going to be showing in the Summit keynotes on day 2, the technical keynote. Definitely, if you can, take time to watch. I think we always live stream those, off the summit.redhat.com site, not here on, Red Hat live streaming YouTube/Twitch, but on the Summit website. Come early May when we have Summit, please take time to watch those, because there's going to be some really cool stuff that gets shown there.
Yeah, that's awesome. We had the performance guys on right before the break, and they were talking about like the generative AI and stuff like that. So like when you start talking about scaling up and then using like not generative AI, I'm sorry, but like prompt engineering. So you start scaling up and you start reaching these things at scale, and then you're like, hey, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to, kind of like the pick your path kind of deal, And I'm like, man, it's getting there. Like some of the stuff that we're doing is just it's awesome.
Yeah. I have nothing more to add. Yes. I know we've been going for about an hour now. I wanted to touch on a couple of things, retrospectively. So 2023 was a pretty busy year for us, right? So we did over 30 streams. When I went back and I have a little script that I use that collects all of the views and everything, we were over 45,000 views on YouTube alone. And that doesn't include Twitch, and that doesn't include a few other things. So, of those 30 streams, we're averaging something like 1,800-ish views, across all the different platforms that they go to, which, Jonny and I can take no credit for that, right? That is entirely you all. It is entirely our audience, and, you all being supportive of us and interacting. I could not figure out a way. So here in Restream, which is the interface that we use to interact with y'all, I could not figure out a way to extract the overall like chat statistics and stuff. But I know it seems like more often than not recently we exceed 100 chats per stream, which is usually the threshold or the barrier that it seems to like in that respect. So I think that's a great thing. Again, we love the interactivity that you all give us. We love answering questions and stuff like that. It's one of the main reasons I think Jonny and I we continue to do this and enjoy it.
100%.
Brandon, thank you for joining us. We're all new at things at different times, so appreciate you coming out. AI bot for OpenShift to fix the cluster by self-healing, Khalid. So I hope so, but at the same time, so I try to be, Andrew tries to be realistic about these types of things, right? Of one, today, there's what we now commonly refer to as AI hallucinations. And in particular, when do you as an admin, as an organization feel comfortable and confident handing over things like a production cluster that's bringing in, core business, how your business is making money, to something that you don't always understand. It's funny to me sometimes to see these public debates around like the AIs and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't even, what was the one I saw recently? I think it was some people chatting internally about how like there was a thing to deliberately like create wrong images, invalid images for AI training models. So it was like, oh, I'm creating an image recognition model to recognize, middle-aged white guys with beards. And so you would grab the data set and it would generate, I say that because I'm looking at the two of us, Jonny. And it would generate, it would throw in images of like, a dog, you see my dog looks, it's got a beard and all this other stuff, or it would throw in like a camel, or it would throw in, like all these other things in order to try and throw it off. And so I guess there was a bunch of data scientists who like encountered this thing, and they figured out that it was making the AI's predictions better, and they couldn't explain why. They had so it was this whole thing of like, sometimes we don't understand what these things are doing. So my hope, Khalid, is that something like that, a generative AI or something that has context awareness, whether it be in RHEL, whether it be in OpenShift, whether it be in whatever we happen to be doing, can make life easier. So, I mean, here, I'll show you an example. Let's come over here to go back to my shared window. So I've got a cluster that's running here, right? And like right now, there's nothing that's really broken, but like I can click on this and there's a warning here. Okay. Does that mean anything? I don't know. Let's say that I were to come here. Oops, nope, workloads, pods. So let's say that I have all of these are completed or running. There's none that are in any kind of error status. But let's say I have a pod that's in a crash loop backoff. I could click in here and it's going to say, oh, it's in a crash loop backoff, and here's some random reasons. But crash loop backoff is like the generic error for any time a pod won't launch. So as the administrator, I have to go in and I have to look at, the things that are happening here, why they're happening. Oh, the volume won't mount. Okay, well, let me go and look at the PVC. Well, why won't the PVC mount? Well, now let me go look at the kubelet logs. Okay, the kubelet logs are saying that, the infamous NFS error 32. Okay, well, what does that mean? And it's like you have to do this whole trace thing, and maybe it takes you 30 or 45 minutes to figure out why this one pod is in a crash loop backoff, or the infamous Docker Hub pull rate limiter. Now I might have this thing, wouldn't it be awesome to have this thing that can help me narrow that down immediately of, hey, we see this crash loop backoff, using the context associated with it, maybe you should start looking here. I have no idea, how feasible that is. Andrew is not a data scientist. Andrew, I can spell AI most days, but I also don't know. So there's the whole thing of RAG and AI, right? So the real-time augmented, how does that, where does that run? How does it collect all of that information from the cluster in order to gain access to it? Like, there's just a bunch of stuff that I have questions around that I'm anxiously awaiting to see what happens here. And I know that there are things out there. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yep. No. You were on it. I should have read your mind. My bad.
Yeah. Well, I know that there's things out there that work that way. I don't know of any that work. I mean, I assume there's something that works with Kubernetes. Can it be made to work with OpenShift? I can assume. I assume I have not tried this. Maybe I should try this. Like, create a GPT with OpenAI that go ingest the OpenShift documentation. Now tell me how to do this. I wonder what that would look like. That's an interesting one. Brandon, do you do open panels? Like an Ask Me Anything?
So, that was my question back to them.
Yeah. I mean, Jonny and I are kind of an open panel. So, yeah, at least if he can give you hints, yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
What's the tool? What's the Red Hat tool that,
for what?
If you have a RHEL machine, Insights. That's what I was trying to think of. Insights is probably for RHEL specifically, right? It's very close to, and I think Insights even can do some things with OpenShift, and it can make suggestions back to hey, you've got this permission set or whatever, right? It can help do some things, but
yeah,
I don't know if it can actually solve.
Yeah, and that's how Andrew created Skynet. One, I do not want to be responsible for Skynet, and two, who what was I watching? I was just watching I think it was a Tech Linked yesterday, where they were talking about how Meta is now investing heavily in creating something that has roughly human level intelligence. And, there's somebody, this has been a couple of months ago, they were speculating that the first general intelligence or general artificial intelligence, basically something that is sentient, could be created anytime from effectively now onward. Some scientist somewhere basically thinks that we have technology to the point where it's theoretically possible, but not feasible still for a few years. I thought that was terrifying, but
Yeah. Isn't that what Isn't that like part of the rumor mill for what Sam Altman got ousted for? That he had that next level AI.
I don't know.
I just remember reading like the gossip
Yeah.
on it, you know. So
Let's see. Oh, talking about insights. Insights is have we ever had the insights folks on here, Johnny? I don't remember if we
I
have
don't
or
think
not.
so.
We should poke at them. I know a few of those folks. So I don't know, but before we run out of time here, Johnny, there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you. So one, anything top of mind for you, like going into 2024, like things that you're excited about, things that you're looking forward to. I know we just talked about AI and all the stuff that's happening there, which feels a little cliche now. 2024, everybody's thinking about AI.
Yeah, I think for me, like the big ones are going to be like our automation around like deploying a lot of these things is just getting better and better, right? I think that like our path to GitOps is getting easier. ACM is just such an awesome tool and hosted control planes and stuff like that. So like I'm really excited to see that, you know, especially from an infra background, right? And being an infra person at the core, you know, seeing that automation for cluster provisioning and cluster maintenance and stuff like that. I think it's just I'm excited to see where that goes because I think there's a big ceiling for it, a high ceiling for it, and I mean we're already starting to see some of the benefits from it, you know. So that's
Yeah.
I think the most thing.
You just see what you need to do is create an Alexa skill. So you can just, hey, Alexa, create me a new OpenShift. Uh,
Yeah,
I've started
right.
spelling these things out. I was watching, I don't remember. I was watching something on TV the other day, and they said SIRI, contact the police, and my phone says, "Oh, do you need help?" Like, no, that's the television. Like, so I try not to call out the various names of the smart assistants, because sometimes it doesn't always have the results you expect it to. It's like, say asking the Amazon one, like, saying its name and then like buy toilet paper or something, and then you end up with one of those buy it now. I just ordered 74 people a new. uh,
Like, oh my God, what happened? Yeah, mine is
yeah.
Google, so like it's always like, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Like, what are you talking about right now?
Let's see. K8GB. I don't know the answer to that. I know that we have had some, like, I see you linked here over to the blog post around that. There is some stuff with the gosh, what is the load balancer? Is it the Ingress API? That's what I was thinking of. So Ingress API is another thing that I'm, I'll say, loosely watching. It's something I've been aware of for a little while and is very interesting. And that's one where, like, we can use CRDs, we can programmatically integrate with a bunch of other API ingress type of things, or API load balancer ingress type things. And it makes it dramatically more powerful, and hopefully simpler at the same time. So answering my own question, right, top of mind, I've been a virtualization person for 15 years.
Mhm.
That was how you and I met, Johnny. We were both virtualization people. So I'm still pretty heavily involved with virtualization stuff. I don't know if anybody can see, I'm actually wearing a Red Hat virtualization jacket today. I think my name tag here covers it up. There, you can see Red Hat.
You should stand up and model it a little bit. Like do like a catwalk back and forth.
That seems arbitrary. I do actually have, like, I don't have pajama pants or anything on, so
That's too bad. Never mind.
But no, it's virtualization is consuming a lot of my time these days, and part of that is, of course, Broadcom and VMware and what's
Mhm.
happening there. And I think a lot of people are, I'll say, concerned. Like, even now, there's a lot of trepidation out there and stuff like that, and people are just looking for what's the options, what's out there, what can I do, what can I try. OpenShift virtualization is now, it's been out since it GA'd. I didn't realize, I had forgotten this. It GA'd in OpenShift 4.5. Like, OpenShift 4.5 was 3 years ago,
Yeah.
like something like that. Maybe
Yeah.
even closer to
Wow.
4 years now. So OpenShift virtualization has been out there for a while, and like when you go in, and I know we've had, most recently we had Ian Pilcher on to talk about OpenShift virtualization. We've had Peter on to talk about virtualization, right? it's a topic that I kind of want to revisit now, particularly once we get to I'll say once we get past Red Hat 1 and we can look at 4.15 and we can look at some other things that are happening there. Like there's just, it is an interesting platform. And if you're looking at particularly, and I know I've said this internally quite a bit, like if you're concerned about, sprawl and stuff like that, using hosted control planes, so OpenShift on bare metal with hosted control planes and the OpenShift virtualization provider, now I can host all of my OpenShift clusters in my OpenShift cluster. And it's, tightly integrated, the points that we were talking about with automation earlier of making it super easy to deploy. If I've got a OpenShift admin team, me and you, Jonny, were responsible for all 500 OpenShift clusters in the organization. Well, the way that that's architected is like SREs in mind. Like it's easier to control those things, or I should say simplified, not necessarily easier. Should enterprises run away from VMware? No, not blanketly, not at all. I don't mean this. I don't say this to be unkind or anything like that. But VMware virtual machines are the new mainframe. Right? They're never going to go away.
Yeah.
People have, or customers have been trying to get off of mainframes since the 90s, and mainframes are still a multi-billion-dollar business. So I have always been very staunchly an advocate for use the technology that's right for the problem. And VMware, to their credit, they created an absolutely amazing product that does and satisfies the needs of, what is their market share penetration? Like 90% or something like that of data center virtualization. Yeah. Like it's a phenomenal product. And if you need VMware, absolutely use VMware. There's nothing wrong with that. Now there might be political reasons, personal reasons, whatever, where you might not like, Broadcom or how they're operating or something like that. Like that's a different matter, but technology wise, no, there's nothing wrong with it. That being said, I think what we're seeing now is, organizations are looking at their use of virtualization. And, I think there's sort of two aspects of that. So this is Andrew speaking, as Andrew, right? This is my personal opinion, not Red Hat official or anything like that. So one, it's what are the features I'm actually using? And are there other alternatives that are available? And then two, it's, should I accelerate my move to cloud native application paradigms? Think, moving into either directly moving into the cloud or moving to something like, Kubernetes on bare metal or, something like that, or even just keeping it in virtual machines, Kubernetes and virtual machines, but reducing that footprint of, hey, today I've got 30 virtual machines. That is my application. And tomorrow I can go to 3 virtual machines running Kubernetes with my 30 components as containers. If that's still a net win and reduces the overall footprint and the management overhead and stuff like that. So yeah, run away from VMware. I would say no. VMware, there is a huge number of really great people over at VMware. I have a lot of good personal friends over there. And they genuinely care about their customers and they genuinely want what's best for them. And I know that I won't say they fight for it because it's not like Broadcom is actively anti-customer, right? Clearly they want to make money just like any other company, but that is very much top of mind for them. If KubeVirt had vBMC, I would be so happy. I don't have an answer for that. I'll poke at Peter Lauterbach about that because we do get asked that, or I have seen workarounds for that with KVM at the RHEL level. Where people in their home labs want to use bare metal IPI without having bare metal. So, using things like Sushi, SUSHY, in order to mimic that or create the vBMC. Steve, no, I don't. I'm not at any of the Red Hat ones this year. Jonny, I don't know if you're going to any of them.
Nope, not this year.
Yeah. So Rev is dying off. Yes. So at this point, Rev is in the final stage of its life cycle. Let's see. Red Hat virtualization life cycle. I'm not sharing my screen.
No, you're not.
So let's share our window again. I just plugged Red Hat virtualization lifecycle into the search engine here. And what we see here is 4.4, which was last released in 2020, is as of August 31st of this year, out of maintenance support. So effectively what that means is, and it describes these things down here, maintenance support phase. So critical and important security advisories are created and applied, but otherwise, and other bug fix advisories may be released at Red Hat's discretion, but should not be expected. So, OpenShift on Rev, I believe, is now deprecated. For all intents and purposes, the Red Hat virtualization is, not receiving. It hasn't received any new features in 4 years since 2020, August of 2020. And then extended life phase is basically, if you have an entitlement, you can go and download the bits, but we're not releasing patches. We're not doing anything, no bug fixes, security fixes, hardware enablement, or root cause analysis will be available. So if you are a Rev customer, you should definitely be working with your account team to figure out what's next. And typically OpenShift virtualization is that natural successor in the Red Hat portfolio. The upstream is overt. Yes, that is correct. When I first started at Red Hat, I was tech marketing for Red Hat virtualization. So I will miss that product. I enjoyed its. It was I say this not in a derogatory manner. It was a simple product, right? It did exactly what it was supposed to do. It didn't have like all of these extra bells and whistles that you didn't need. I need a high performance virtualization platform that gives me, high availability, all of that other stuff. It was great for that. But, now we talk a lot about modernizing virtualization infrastructure. So taking all of those features of OpenShift around infrastructure management and the way all that stuff happens, and applying that to and for virtualization. So it's interesting. I have a lot of fun with it these days. And there's also, so we created a roadshow. So kind of talking out loud. We created a roadshow where folks can go and get hands-on with OpenShift virtualization. So I know that they're working to schedule a bunch of those across various regions across the globe. So keep an eye out if you're on whatever Red Hat mailing lists. Keep an eye out for any of those where you can go and get hands-on with it. Do we have anything else on the list over here? I had one for you, Jonny. What do you think of OpenShift as an app platform versus, I'll say, merely enterprise Kubernetes? So I'll precurse that, or I'll give you my definitions, right? So enterprise Kubernetes is sort of the typical Red Hat magic sauce. So if you think of RHEL, right? RHEL is Linux. Well, Linux is just a collection of packages. I'm using broad sweeping terms here, generalizations clearly. So it's a collection of packages and the kernel and all that other stuff. And you could go anywhere. You can assemble your own and call it a Linux distribution, right? Red Hat's magic is we test and validate and support all of those things. We do the same thing with Kubernetes. We just call it OpenShift, right? I take the kubelet, and I take all of the other things that make up OpenShift of OLM, operator lifecycle manager, and the SDN, and blah 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 blah, and test and validate and give support. So you could call that enterprise Kubernetes in the same way that RHEL is enterprise Linux. So the application platform aspect is taking all of those features of OpenShift on top of just Kubernetes. So think metrics and logging and horizontal pod autoscaler, vertical pod autoscaler, and all of these things to where I can deploy my application and I have tools out of the box that are just there for, or that are there immediately to do things like, oh, something is wrong, I'm getting an alert. And now I can have that alert trigger an action to scale my application out. And I'm collecting all the logs so I can go back and review what was happening inside of there instead of having to collect all these things together. So I'm curious as to whether or not you think that'll that we'll see. One, I know we'll see more messaging around this. We'll see more marketing material around that.
Yeah.
Whether or not that holds meaning, because you were in the consulting side for a long time, so I know that you have experience in implementing a lot of those things.
Yeah, I think, and it's like when you're saying that, like, it's one of those duality kind of questions, right? Like if I put on your platform engineering hat, right, you're like it's enterprise Kubernetes 100% through and through because that's all the things that I love and hold dearly and I care about, to make my stuff that keeps me up at night alive and well, like my security posture, all that stuff, right? My compliance. So then like you're like, all right, cool. But then from the app dev side, you're like, yeah, I just need something where I can go and do my thing as quickly as possible. I need like if I want to use OpenShift pipelines, I want to be able to take OpenShift pipelines, put it out there, do my thing, and then if there's a problem, take action with it, right? But as quickly as possible without me having to be an infrastructure person or have a bunch of infrastructure knowledge. So I think it's literally like depends on which side of the coin you land on.
Yeah, you know me. I'm an old infrastructure guy. I have been
Hmm.
for a long time. So I always look at the enterprise side of things first, and I think we're starting. I think we're starting to see more and more importance around those application platform things.
Yeah.
You look at the um, software supply chain security stuff, like the validated pattern and stuff that your team has been working on, where it's this whole bevy of things layered on top to provide more robust functionality than just, I say just, air quotes, facetiously, just an enterprise Kubernetes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to answer Alan's question here, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it comes down to like look at hosted control planes and look at where that's going, right? That's meant to help you. Like, let me stand something up quickly. Let me run this. Let me do this, and then so it helps you with those stages when you're trying to like, okay, I want to push something out quickly before it gets into production, but I need to make sure that it's going to work, the way I'm expecting it to. So you can spin up a cluster quickly. You can run your tests against it, and then you have abundance of confidence that like when it gets to production, it's going to work because you're using the same APIs, you're using console URL or your routes and stuff like that are going to be the same. So it's like, I think we're gearing towards that. And then when you look at the developer hub and stuff like it, we are really getting from like, all right, we have platform engineers and then we have app devs, and how do we get those two to coalesce without too much bleed over, right? Where one thinks that they have to know more than the other.
Yeah, I was reminded recently. So there used to be, I guess there still is, right, a whole thing of, and I might have talked to you about this before. I might even mention on here, right, the concept of vulnerability, right?
Hmm.
So there's a phenomenal TED talk that's done by a lady named Brene Brown that talks about vulnerability, and not just in relationships like you and your significant other, but like even in coworker, like you and I, or teams of people, like hey, my team and your team, and like so a long time ago, I used to give talks to to storage teams about like, hey, like sometimes you have to open up and like tell people about like some of the ways where your infrastructure is. I'm gonna use the word vulnerable, but not like security wise, but like cannot do these things, cannot provide
Hmm.
enough gigabytes, cannot provide enough IOPS, cannot provide low enough latency, or this IO pattern, we're using this storage technology and this IO pattern doesn't work well on it. Like, can you work with the app team and change that and make it better? And if you just show a little bit of that vulnerability, then it benefits everybody. It benefits the entire business. And, strangely enough, that's sort of, if you look in between the lines, that's one of the core, principles in the Phoenix project is like
Hmm.
having that, being a little bit vulnerable with each other in order to achieve better success by, you know, uh, uh, working together. Another way I used to describe it is, I built my career off of being an infrastructure admin, right? My performance, the money that I was paid and my performance review was based off of how efficiently, meaning how cheaply, I can provide the most nines possible to my applications. And for every nine that you go up, going from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, like every one of those increases is an exponential increase in cost.
Hmm.
So what if I talk to my application teams and say, hey, I can give you 4 nines and I know the business requirement is 5 nines. Like, what if you take this, responsibility in on the application? And usually the example that I would use is RTO 0, right? Can you do it at the infrastructure level? Yes. It is stupidly complex and expensive to have, an instant failover between two data centers and all of the moving parts and pieces that have to happen there. But if I can make the failover, if I can get it down to maybe 5 or 10 or 15 minutes and let the application handle like that intermediary time, it suddenly gets dramatically easier.
Hmm.
So, anyways, it's an interesting thing that I think continues to evolve, and it's something that has repeatedly come up throughout my career, and I'm curious to see how that's going to change in 2024. Going back to what we were saying before, AI and what that means, and cloud native, and people reconsidering, evaluating what they're doing with their on-prem infrastructure, in light of industry developments and all that other stuff. So.
Yeah, it's like dealing
Um,
with that one person that always answered no first. They were always no and angry the first time you go
yeah,
to them, and then you gotta let them
yeah,
soften up, and then you go back.
I was a storage admin, right? I had like no, like I had a no button on my keyboard. Like it
That's
was,
right. No engineering.
yeah, automatically says no and hits send on the email. Oh, you need 500 terabytes of storage? No, like and then I
Yeah.
became a VM admin, right? Oh, you need 400 VMs with 93 terabytes of memory? No, like,
Yeah.
and so you get used to that. And then of course, the applications folks, they adjust, and it's well, I know if I go to Sully and I ask for this, he's going to tell me no and cut it by down to 10%. So if I just ask for 10 times more than what I actually need, I'll get what I need. And,
Yeah.
you create this dance. Anyways, sad part is getting OpenShift virtualization to install OpenShift. Wish something Harvester existed for Red Hat. Is that in the pipeline? Yes, that's hosted control planes. So hosted control planes with we call it the kubevert provider in the same way that we call the Rev IPI installer overt. But effectively, it is you create the hosted control plane, an instance of the managed cluster CRD, and it talks to OpenShift virtualization. It creates the worker node virtual machines, and you got a whole cluster up and running and ready to go. There was a decision made not to support OpenShift virtualization as an IPI provider, a traditional IPI provider. So having dedicated control plane virtual machines in favor of the hosted control planes paradigm. I would say if that is something that is interesting to you, to reach out, and I'm happy to make the product management team aware of that. Hive allowed you to do that. Yeah, Hive does. So Hive is. This is Andrew summarizing. It's effectively the same as doing OpenShift install, from the command line. In fact, it might actually be doing that in some cases, like spinning up a pod to run OpenShift install and deploy a cluster. I'm honestly not sure. I haven't looked at it in a couple of years.
Yeah. Same.
Whereas hosted control planes is very much a different paradigm, right? It's cluster API centric. It relies on tight integration between the hosted cluster and the hosting cluster. I don't remember who we had on when we talked about hosted control planes, Jonny. Here we had it here on the stream
Adele.
where they were saying, yeah. So I remember, talking about how, do things like auto scaling and, the traditional functionality associated with machine sets of I go in and I increase my node count from 2 to 7 and it just handles it. All of that's still there, right? It's just the hosted cluster talks to the hosting cluster and says, hey, increase my node pool from 2 to 7.
Hmm.
And of course, all of that can also be RBAC controlled and controlled at the hosting cluster as well.
Oh.
I don't think I had anything else. You got anything, Jonny?
No, I'm just looking forward to the year, man. I'm excited about a lot of things. I don't know if you can tell. Like, once you start talking about some things, I'm like, oh my god, like I'm amped up. I'm ready to go. Like, I'm ready to see some of this stuff come to fruition. And you and I have been on the business end of some of these like conversations before, where it's like, well, why aren't you doing the shit? Why isn't this there yet? So it's kind of cool to see some of these things coming out, and we're about to hit the rubber's about to hit the road, and it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. AI is just, it's one of those things. It's very interesting. So, design document or book available based on use cases for OpenShift deployment. I'm sure there is. So let's see. Where's my window here? Let's share this. So there's a couple of things to look at. So if we go to docs.openshift.com, And now I am forgetting where it's at. So yeah, here. So underneath Rosa, there's this tutorials thing, and this is documentation that started with the managed OpenShift Black Belts team, and now I don't remember what their actual URL was for all of that stuff. What it used to be. Every once in a while, I stumble across it.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's Red Hat dot Red Hat dot .com/experts. No, so Red Hat experts. Cloud.redhat.com/experts. I was close.
I
So
typed exports.
So the stuff that you'll find on here is generally, again, it came from the managed OpenShift folks. So it's going to be focused on that, but it has a bunch of stuff that can kind of apply to both depending on what you're looking for. So I think that this one is kind of a cool site. It's a great place to go and just see really cool, really interesting things that are happening and that you can do with the cluster inside of there. Beyond that, there's a couple of places you can go. So you've got redhat.com/architect. So inside of here, you have just a number like blog posts and various other resources and articles and stuff like that that can be helpful. But you also have this portfolio architecture link up here at the top. So inside of here, you'll find a couple of different resources. So one is the actual portfolio architectures. So these are slightly higher level kind of block diagram type things around how you can put together all of the parts and pieces in order to do different things. Like here's supply chain optimization. And I don't know where the graphics are that I'm looking for, but here it is. So like you can see it's block level diagram of, hey, you can put all of these things together and do all of these things in order to create something really cool, right? Here's a whole supply chain type of thing. Supply chain here being, I think, related to software supply chain, not like except supply chain. Also on this site is Jonny's team's work, which is the validated patterns. So the validated patterns, which I think, I don't remember which of these. Yeah, here we go. Validated pattern. So the validated patterns are exactly that. Of I have an OpenShift cluster. I can go in and Jonny tell me to insert my foot and mouth at any point in time and take over.
Go for it, man. You got this.
I have a cluster and I want to do something, this industrial edge type of thing, right? Scenario. So using GitOps and other tools, I tell it go and deploy this into my cluster, and it, for lack of a better term, stamps out this example infrastructure and all of the integrations, including an application that sort of proves end to end that it functions the way that it is supposed to. And of course, you can go in and pull out that application and use your own and do, all of the things, or use it as a basis for the things that you're wanting to do. So that is one way to learn. But I will admit that, and I, so far as I know, I don't think that these cover like the baseline OpenShift architecture type of things.
That's correct. Yeah, it's a bring your own cluster type of thing. We do give some sizing guidance, but yeah, generally it's just you bring the cluster, we deploy the app.
So typically for that type of information, and I wish that I had a better answer at this point in time, I tend to suggest you check out the scalability and performance section of the documentation. So in here, you'll find a bunch of stuff around like recommended performance and scalability practices for, the control plane. And it talks about things like, not just scale up by no more than 25 to 50 machines at once, which seems like a large increment to scale, but control plane node sizing and various other architecture things. I do know that there are some internal resources that are available. I say that knowing that 3 years ago, I wrote an OpenShift sizing and architecture guide. It's available internally, but not publicly. And I'm sure you can ask your account team or other Red Hat folks, how to get access to it. I know that there's the services folks, the consulting folks would be very upset if we didn't mention them. And of course, that's like their bread and butter, right? That's what they're
Mhm.
here for, to help with those types of things. So,
And I will say,
yeah.
like one thing that we covered last year too is like if you're in a public cloud, specifically AWS, you can start with a 3 node compact cluster, and then you can start scaling out your control plane with the control plane machine set. It is, to me, that's probably one of the coolest tools that came out, like that, or that G8 is that control plane machine set, because to be able to go from like oh my god, I undersized this significantly, I need to scale up, right, to just go and scale that up like I would any other machine on a compact cluster. It takes a little bit of time because it's got to do all the etcd magic, but it works and it's awesome. And it's literally like, dash replicas equals whatever I want it. Well, obviously not whatever I want it, but I go and update the machine set size, or the node size, and then it rolls them out like any other
Yep.
machine set. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And Johnny, I know you've heard me say this before, of the nice thing with OpenShift is you don't have to get it right. The
100%.
the only like there's only, I think, 2 or maybe 3 things that are like cannot be changed after deployment. One is FIPS.
Mhm.
So if you need FIPS, you have to turn that on at deployment. There's no other option, or you can't turn it off after either. So if you deployed FIPS and you decide you don't want it, you also got to reapply. 2 is, and I believe that this is on the roadmap to change, and that is hybrid overlay network. So if you want to use Windows nodes in your cluster, there's a thing that you set when you initially deploy the cluster. And then 3 is single node OpenShift. So if you deploy single node OpenShift, you cannot change that single node. You can't really call it a cluster; it's a single node. So you
Mhm.
cannot convert that into a traditional 3 node control plane. It is one control plane node. It will always be one control plane node. Even if you add additional worker nodes, you cannot change it to have more than one control plane node. Those 3 things come to mind. Like, everything else is changeable. Like, oh, my cluster accidentally grew to 200 nodes and 40,000 pods. Like, I need to go from 4 CPUs and 16 gigabytes of RAM on a control plane node to whatever. Okay,
Mhm.
do a rolling upgrade and you're done. Oh, I missized my, application nodes. Okay, deploy and add new, or create a new machine set and change it. Oh, I need to switch to using, a different load balancer. I want to use I don't know, a Citrix instead of an F5. Oh, okay, you can change that. Like, very, very few things are just fundamentally not,
Mhm.
set in stone from the moment that that the cluster is created. So, I know I've said here before on the stream of, deploy the cluster however you think it should be, and then use the monitoring tools and the alerting tools and, the other resources that are available, and, you know, continuously reevaluate. Uh, Maybe there'll
And
be an
that's
AI
evolution,
someday.
right? That's evolution and maturity. I think if you go back to early on OpenShift, like OpenShift 3, it was difficult but doable. Um, but like even in OpenShift 4 early on, right there, yes, it just took time to learn and figure out like, okay, I'm not stuck. I can actually redo these things, or I can do these things in a different way. Like, but you're right. Like you can always redo it or undo it for the most part, right? Most things you can just kind of like you can fix them. So
Yeah. Yep. Unless you break etcd. No. Even that you can sometimes recover from. Well, I know probably just a couple minutes left. So anybody who is still listening, if you have any questions, thoughts, comments, etc., please don't hesitate to leave them in chat. If you are not listening to us live, if something occurs to you after the stream ends, please be sure to reach out to us. You can reach Jonny or I probably most easily via email, jonny at redhat.com, or Sully, Sully at redhat.com. You can also reach out to us via Slack. So we're both on the Kubernetes Slack. There is a channel in there called OpenShift Users. It's me and Jonny and like 4,500 of our closest friends. So it's a great place to just go and ask questions. Thank you, Jonny. for putting that up on the screen there. So kubernetes.slack.com. Go there, register for an account. If you're not familiar with it, and I occasionally get asked this because it's not always straightforward. So if you go to kubernetes.slack.com, it'll say, oh, you need to sign in, and if you don't know how to sign in, or if you don't have an account, it's like, how do you get one? Well, way up here in the corner, it's kind of hard to, or kind of easy to miss rather. Click this create an account, and it'll say your email at getaninvite@slack. Blah, 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 blah. So what you want to do is go to getaninvite@slack.kubernetes.io. And, oh, really? Are you not going to? What happened? Anyways, you're supposed to go to this website, and now it's returning back as not having. I don't know what happened here. Well, I don't know what happened there, but it used to be that you could go to that site, and that's how you plugged in the thing. Is maybe it's broken, or maybe my DNS is broken. I don't know. I've been ignoring my home lab lately. Maybe something broke in there. Anyways, the way that you are supposed to do that is browse to this site, and it will. You plug in your email address, and it generates the. Oh, there it goes. Well, that was weird. So, it's slack.kubernetes.io. Oof. So it's not get an invite at, it's just slack.kubernetes.io. See, this is what happens. I very rarely do this myself, you can tell. So once you go to slack.kubernetes.io, it redirects you over to the community inviter. You plug in your email address here, and it'll generate the invite so that you can then join the Kubernetes Slack channel. Wow. I'm embarrassed for myself. That was way too complicated, and I've done this multiple times, so you can see you can see where it can be confusing. So, anyways, please join us over on the Kubernetes Slack, the OpenShift users channel. Jonny and I are there. You can tag us. My username there, I don't know if everybody can see it on Slack or not, is Practical Andrew. You are very welcome to reach out to me there. Other than that, email is a great way to reach out to us. All of that. So rhope9. Sorry, it's two greens and a red. You don't win anything. Rhope9.
Yep. It's all or nothing.
Yep. It's like a slot machine. We will be back next week. I don't remember what our topic is next week. Have we figured that out yet, Jonny?
No.
Okay. So
of course not.
we will get that posted. We will get that staged as soon as we figure out what our topic next week is going to be. I have a couple of ideas, including some interesting things. Some things I want to try this year. Some interesting stuff with the stream. Jonny and you and I have talked about at various points doing things like. And for anybody who's listening to us now, I would very much appreciate your feedback. How'd you feel about doing a lab together? Like,
yes,
we can provision a bunch of instances. Like, I can talk to the demo platform team and get 30, 40, 50 instances of a lab, and then we can all walk through a lab together and see what that looks like. Maybe that's interesting to people, maybe not. I don't know. So if you've ever been to Summit, you've ever done like a lab at Summit or something like that, or kind of any of the equivalents, doing that as a live stream, that could be interesting. So I want to try that out. Just finding the right topic. Of course, my world right now is virtualization. So, OpenShift virtualization. Anyways, there's a bunch of stuff, Jonny and I have been talking about collaborating and colluding on here in the background for what's happening with the stream. So thoughts, comments, suggestions, requests, etc. are always welcome. Don't hesitate to reach out. With that, I click around in the interface to figure out how to close this thing. Jonny, any last thoughts?
Thanks to everybody that stayed through this full hour and 45 minutes with us and listened to us ramble on. And we do. Sully said earlier, like about the interaction with the group. We love it. Like it is what keeps us coming back. So really appreciate it. rhope9, it's good to see you again. And glad to see that Waleed and Khalid are all doing well. So, looking forward to a good year, Andrew, and it's gonna be amazing.
All right, thanks, y'all. See you in a week.